Hello and welcome to Simply inTAXicating. For the GST which has just turned 1 year old, it appears that it has largely settled down, but there are many issues which are still unresolved. Trade industry and various associations and chambers have expressed their satisfaction with the stage of implementation of GST. However, there are ticklish issues which need to be handled, answered, some legislative changes which have to be handled. Of course, the GST Council has last week released 46 amendments. Some of the amendments are very substantive. Industry and trade have already welcomed it. They will look forward to more such changes, particularly the ITC blockage. Apart from that, the annual return format, the audit format, the single page return, which are likely to be taken up by the GST Council at its next meeting and to be approved. Apart from that, e-way bill, to what extent industry and trade is compatible? Although the government has claimed, and going by various statements of the CBIC senior officials, that lakhs of e-way bill being generated and trade industry has accepted it, they are very compatible now. However, there are still certain issues. We have 4 domain experts in the studio. We have Mr. Somesh Arora, former Commissioner of Customs and Excise and a practicing advocate. We have Mr. Mohammad Arshad from Escorts Ltd. We have Mr. Rajiv Thakur, President of Velocis Systems, one of the leading GSPs. And we have Neeraj Bhagat, founder of Neeraj Bhagat, that company, our knowledge partner also. Let me start with Mr. Arshad only. So please tell us, the e-way bill, of course, I mean, if we look at what happened initially, and now it was re-kicked by the government, and the e-way bill was relaunched in a big way. To a large extent, appears that the good number of traders, good number of industries are little compatible, but there are still some issues.
Yeah, thank you, Shailendra, first of all, for giving me this opportunity. First of all, I must thank to the GSTN portal for stabilizing the generation of e-way bill. Initially, there was a big hiccup and government has to defer implementation of the e-way bill. But still, there remains many unanswered questions. Say, for example, in companies, it is a general practice to meet their monthly or quarterly targets, they issue a large number of invoices on the last day of the month. So for the tax is concerned, there is no issue, the tax will be paid once the invoice has been issued. But movement of goods starts after some time. So that is an open issue. If somebody generates invoice and e-way bill both, then movement of the goods, if it is not taking place within the prescribed time period, that is an issue. Although there is no malified intention. And one more thing is related to that, recognition of the sale. Unless I issue a way bill, accounting persons are not going to recognize that as a sale, because it would be against the accounting standard, because delivery is not made. That is one issue. Apart from that, there is another challenging issue, that is with regard to sale on doorsteps. There is a new concept, you might have heard, there are salesmen that move from place to place, and whatever customers they find, they used to sell those goods. While moving the vehicle, even place is not known. I would rather give you an example. Say, for example, in our company, we have planned and rather we have started doorstep service for servicing and repair of the tractors. Okay. So what we intend, our mobile service van equipped with the parts, equipment and tools, etc., will move on the basis of the call received from a call center. Right. The modus operandi would be like that, whoever is owning a tractor or his driver would, in case of any problem, will call to give a call center. Okay. Call center will direct that call to a manager. Right. He will assign that particular job to a particular mobile service van. Now what is there, we have to keep certain amount of parts and component always in the vehicle, because it is never known what parts would be replaced.
Required, right, correct.
And now we take an example. Say, for example, in Faridabad, we have a van, we move that to Gurgaon. On receiving a complaint, there may be 5 lakh rupees worth of parts and equipments, etc. in that van. So and we can generate a way bill for that. There is no problem initially. Right. But what happens when another call is received while my vehicle is in Gurgaon, that is from Mahendragarh. Now you move to Mahendragarh for servicing some other tractor. Again, as per the present requirement, one has to issue a challan and as well as a way bill. Right. So while the vehicle is moving, and there may be certain locations which are very remote or very distantly located. So how all those processes can be complied with? And in case of non-compliance, all the stock that is being carried in the vehicle, that can be confiscated. Right. So it is a very draconian provision with regard to mobile servicemen if they are moving for sale as well as providing services to the doorstep. And this is an emerging area.
Maybe Neeraj, you would like to address this question.
Yes.
You see, the GSTN Council would have to come with a proposal for that. Now, in case of a goods which are moving from one location to another, and there's a sales also, at that point of time. Now, you see the practical example in case of airplanes. Now, when the goods are, when the pantry and all that, they're loaded on the plane. So, at that point of time, the place of provision is, the place of sales is the place of where the goods are loaded. So, similar provisions would have to come in the case of a goods which are loaded on a car and they are sold at different locations. So, ultimately, when this implementation is based to a GST council, there would be provisions wherein the goods are loaded. Ultimately, they would be considered as a sales. So, that should the proposal be coming in. And suppose at any point of time when the car comes in the evening, the goods which are not sold, so you would have to make an entry in the books of account that these are the goods which are unsold. So, they are ultimately left with the company. So, they are unsold goods. So, ultimately, there should be a system in place that when the car moves, so whatever goods are lying in the car, it means they are sold. Whatever comes in the evening, it should be unsold stock. So, that's how it should be the provision.
What is your solution? That's very correct.
Yes.
In fact, this problem is very peculiar in relation to beverages, where they load a lot of this thing, Thumbs Up, Coca-Cola and all that on the trucks, and then they go to door and sell some crates and then they bring back. So, this is the only solution which is available. A GSTN network will have to gear up with that. Procedures will have to be evolved. Yes, this is a problem area and there needs to be. More important, what I feel is in relation to e-way bills, is the practice which really makes me concerned, is the practice that most of the states are having their own rules and set of regulations. Unilaterally, they are raising the limits. 50,000 is the limit which was discussed in the council. Central e-way bill has a 50,000 limit. Number of states follow that. Very disciplined, good, compliant states. Number of states are having their own diversion practice going up to 1 lakh and this thing. Now, e-way bill is supposed to be a measure which is anti-evasion measure. Hold up, this is
Absolutely.
what has been noted out. Now, if you allow the states to unilaterally change this limit, means they are less compliant compared to the states which are adhering to the limit of 50,000. Now, when it comes to compensating states, where you say that, okay, your revenues will be looked into and all of that. For that, and 14% augmented and they will be compensated on that basis. Now, if a state makes a policy which are more evasion prone, naturally it needs to be punished. So, somewhere the council will have to put its foot down that no divergence of practices unless council approves it. Unilaterally, both some states are ruled by the government, other states are not ruled by the central government or the political party. They are also adhering to these kind of things. But this is what needs to be stopped. It is essentially an anti-evasion measure and no diversion should be permitted.
Right. So, a very valid point that there is a need for uniformity in the threshold, whatever it is. It should be across the country. But, let me ask Mr. Thakur that from systems perspective, I mean, there is some talk, some undercurrents, probably the GST Council will have to take a call that the e-way bill and the GSTR1, probably they are planning to, they want these two to talk to each other. If that is going to happen, what challenges do you look at from systems perspective?
Very nice question, in fact. I just want to bring to your thoughts that e-way bill is being generated by NIC and GSTR1 is under the domain of GST.
GST, right.
So both are two different legal entities. Okay. And in the technology side, like 6 months before GSTR1 was in focus and fashion, today it is matching which is in fashion. And what needs to be now matched is GSTR1 invoices with e-way bill systems, e-way bills.
Right.
Okay. So we have started doing that matching. Now that matching is leading to compliance on both the sides. You cannot just show things have been shipped out and moved.
Right.
If the invoice is not there, you cannot show that, and you cannot do this also if the invoice is missing.
Absolutely.
So compliance will go forward once the matching starts in a very regular way. And the challenge is one system cannot give us both the data. We have to fetch it from both the systems.
So that's a challenge with the GSP will face. But from the system perspective.
Yeah, Rajiv, I have a question over here. E-way bill is required in respect of movement of the goods, whether it is a supply or not a supply, right? So there would be a greater number of e-way bill generated by any of the assessee. And if we go to match e-way bill with the sales, then definitely there would be a greater mismatch. So from that perspective, matching with the GSTR 1 and ITC 04, if we are sending the goods to a job worker, and there may be certain more transactions of that nature,
right?
How those will be coped up?
I'll give you a very generic answer on this. You know, and I'll just take you to how purchase matching is being done with two-way.
Yeah.
Now suppose you have done a matching and you have got 90% as matched, 10% as missing, or 10% needs to be modified and corrected. Fundamentally, it's a good state and a healthy state of affairs. Now, if you do a matching and the result of reconciliation is only 30%,
right,
it's really a systematic fault at your end.
Yes.
Appreciate the point. So, you know, without getting too much into finer details of how things went done, so once you do a matching, you'll come to a threshold. That between GSTR 1 and e-way bill, if I get a matching of 70%, I need to make certain micro changes.
Yes.
But if you're getting only 20%, you need to make systematic changes in the whole thing.
Right.
And that is where everything gets triggered.
Very well said.
At least high value transactions can be matched. That's good enough,
Absolutely,
you achieve the purpose.
Yes.
Absolutely. You know, but since it is a preventive measure, e-way bill, the government will certainly do something like this.
Yes.
I believe the states are putting a little more pressure on the council to do this. But the states themselves are not following the uniformity. Some of the states have only specified certain number of goods for which the e-way bill to be generated. I don't know how this is going to...
And there are certain issues with regard to the time limit prescribed for transportation. Suppose we have our plant in Faridabad and Noida is hardly 30-40 kilometers from there. We have a depot rather in Ghaziabad that is 50 kilometers away. But what happens is the trucks are not allowed to enter UP via Delhi. Then they have to take a route that is approximately 200 kilometers.
Oh, I see.
So they have to go via Aligarh bypass route, and very often that route is overcrowded and there are massive jams. At times the vehicles are blocked in the jam for 8 hours, 10 hours like that. So completing the complete transportation within the prescribed time at times becomes a challenge. So there should be a very some provision for this key. In such a situation, the time limit can be increased.
Okay. Okay, that's a valid point.
And then the e-way bill, you know, it's a destination which should decide. Even if I'm passing through Delhi to go back to Haryana, it should not be a matter of concern because eventually the destination is mentioned in the e-way bill. So whatever route I take, that is my choice. Whether I pass
Delhi, I guess he's saying because after the Supreme Court order, they have to bypass Delhi. Bypass Delhi. That's the reason. But if we keep aside this Supreme Court issue and the Delhi NCR reason, but otherwise e-way bill has really helped in terms of the trucks traveling more distance, etc. and all that.
E-way bill is definitely, it is for a very good purpose, and even the trade is benefited with that. Unnecessary questions, unnecessary checking, that have been reduced.
Okay.
So if a truck is carrying proper invoices with e-way bill, then there is no harassment per se.
Okay. So in maybe months and years to come, probably it will settle down. Ultimately, government wants that e-way bill should go away.
And we should understand.
That is the objective.
The good thing is, the judgment from a particular high court which says that mobile squads are no.
Right.
So that other states will also have to gradually follow. And these mobile squads are not, you just can't saying, that okay, we have done away with transit naka and mobile squads come.
Right.
So somewhere the High Court ruling also supports that you cannot be having mobile squads just like that in routine.
Okay. Okay. So let me go to Neeraj. I mean, you have taken a look at this the amendments proposed by the GST Council, which are going to be taken up at 21st meeting. What are those beneficial amendments for the industry and trade?
You see, first one is the revision of the returns. So that's a very beneficial because the trade it has still to come with the the changes that have been made with the GST. So suppose the practical issues are there. Suppose somebody raises an invoice to a particular customer. Now the customer has a cycle of approval of the invoices. It's not that you raise an invoice, the next day it's approved. Right. So there is a complete hierarchy to approve that. So it takes time, sometimes a week, sometimes 10 days. Now suppose the invoice is raised on the 30th and the invoice is approved on 21st. And by the time the due date is already over. So ultimately he cannot take a credit for that. So the revision becomes a necessity. So that's why it's a good proposal, and wherein the trade would be able to revise the return and there is a matching of income with the invoice which has been sent by the supplier. So that's a very good amendment. Second environment that is a very healthy one is that the GSTN Council says that there should be allowed the credit for the insurance, the
Outdoor catering.
catering,
Yes.
and the
Food
insurance,
and beverages.
foods and beverages.
Right.
But they say that it should be only if there is an obligation. Now, when you see the IT sector, the call centers and the KPOs, wherein if you don't provide a cab, the employees won't come. So it's not an obligation, but it's a necessity of the business. So the government they have asked for the comments from the stakeholders. So my request is that they should say that depending on the nature of the business, it's a requirement of the business, then they should allow that. So these are the two amendments, which I feel that they will go a long way in increasing the revenue of the company.
How do you look at this?
See, the coined phrase during the service sector regime was in furtherance of business, and they were permitting all this, okay, for the welfare of people, fine. Now here, because of certain rulings coming, they had to amend the law and say, that these are permitted in certain cases. But eventually, in furtherance of business, whatever is there has to be permitted. So once you're making changes, you should be obviously going in tune with the earlier thinking which was prevailing in service sector regime. Says anything in further of business, you permit it. So that's what should be this obligation, that obligation. So again, leaving door for interpretation is not a good thing.
Yeah.
While making changes, amending, do it totally. Similarly, like in the case of composition limit, 75 to 1 crore to 1.5. Now this was a recommendation of the council in October, November, being implemented now. Already so much of a time lost. Now on the income tax side, you have up to 2 crore notional income for the business, no accounts required, which was much talked about when it was brought on in the Finance Act in 2015, that we are doing something, everybody will be free to have. And then in 2016 also, when they reduced the rate from 8 to 6%, again it was talked much about by the government. But what you do by one hand, you take away by the other. Now somebody who is within the limit of 1.5 crore to 2 crores may not be required to maintain elaborate accounts for the income tax purposes, but will be required for the GST purposes. Correct. So what purpose it serves? Eventually, if you're doing changes, make it practical so that all laws within taxation regime are taken care of.
Okay. So, Mr. Arshad, let me go back to the amendments, and you will have some canteens in the factory.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
So how do you look at the changes which are being?
Yeah, actually, there are two ways of looking at the thing. Number one, the outdoor catering, if caterer is charging 18%, and there are other food service provider who are charging 5%, there is a gap in itself. Now, what happens ki, on one hand, if I am taking the services, I am not allowed to take credit. But at the same time, if I am a provider of the similar services, then I am allowed to take credit. Suppose I am buying the food for the employees from an outdoor caterer, 100 rupees per plate. He is charging GST at 18 rupees. Now, if I don't charge any amount for my employee, this 18 rupees is going into my books as a cost. So my total cost per plate is 118 rupees. Now, what happens ki if I am charging say only 1 rupee, for the ease of understanding, say I am charging 30 rupees, then I have to pay GST on that because I become a service provider. And any service provided by employer to employee is chargeable to GST. There again is a question, what would be the assessable value? Since employee and employer are related party,
Right.
Then the valuation would be the open market value.
Correct.
And open market value of that food item is 100 rupees. It cannot be denied. Then I am required to pay 18 rupees GST on that. For me, actually it is not a cost because in any case 18 rupees was a cost had I not supplied the goods. And now if I have taken that and paid to the government again, so it is for me a neutral situation. But less compliance, also for the compliance is concerned, it would be easy if the government allows credit.
Now the amendment says that in case of this kind of outdoor catering, if it is a kind of statutory obligation, then you can avail credit. There is no issue.
Actually, this position was even earlier. The legal view was that even earlier, the people were taking credit wherever it was provided under the law in respect of the medical services, medical health insurance also, and in respect of the canteen also. But so far the canteen is concerned, under the factories that there is a provision to provide a canteen.
Right.
But canteen doesn't mean to serve the food.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So serving the food.
They have not defined the word expression canteen.
Canteen you have to provide.
So
canteen, a place,
means
a place to eat. That is there.
That's all.
That's all.
Okay.
But government has nowhere made it clear that no, you have to provide the food also, or it has to be subsidized. Government is mum on that. Now, wherever the canteen services are provided, the food are being served, it is a welfare scheme of the company. So, even if allowing the credit, which is not obligatory under any law, if that credit is not allowed, so amendment will not serve the purpose. The similar situation remains in case of the health insurance also, because health insurance in respect of the workers who are covered under the Minimum Wages Act, that is an obligation under the law, but those who are not covered under the Minimum Wages Act, they are out of the purview.
Right, right.
And while government is going to extend a beneficial provision for the welfare
Might as well
of the
make
society,
it very holistic.
yes, they should take a holistic view and it should be allowed.
Correct.
Yeah.
See, this will benefit only the industry which is into manufacturing. When you see the knowledge industry, the software
Services sector
industry,
particularly,
so
yes.
that it would not benefit.
Yes.
And all these things, they are very important for keeping the employees motivated.
Right.
So if the employees are not motivated, you don't have an efficiency. So that's very important. It's companies are giving voluntary just to keep the employees motivated, and it's for the furtherance of business, and it should be allowed. The credit should be allowed for that.
And there is especially when our Prime Minister has introduced a number of schemes for the health insurance of the masses, and if a company is voluntarily covering their employee and their families, then at least due care should be given to that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
See, in the knowledge industry, you're working odd shift, the ladies are working odd shift. You can't expect them to go eat and out and all those things. So eventually you have to allow everything which is in furtherance of business.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's a welfare measure being
Yeah, of
taken by
course.
the employer at its own cost. So it should be encouraged.
Welfare measure taken by government is put on one stand, and welfare measure taken by the enterprise or the companies are put on the different stand. So we should not
Correct.
make
See,
this
I'll go
relation.
further and I'll just give an argument right now.
Right.
You are saying that 1% should be the spend on social obligation. Is the spend on the welfare of the labor not a worker, not a social obligation? It is very much.
Yes,
So
very much.
somewhere this argument will be taken.
Right.
So use your expression properly.
Yes.
And furtherance of business is a good expression.
Yes.
Tried and tested. Allow that to happen.
Right. So let me go to Mr. Thakur. Now that although there has been a legal opinion, and that is why good number of enterprises and taxpayers, they carry forward their, the cesses particularly in their trans one. Now they are clarifying that you were not eligible, you were not entitled to claim that. So naturally, don't you think that the GST Council should take a view that if such a clarification with retrospective effect, 1st July, from the appointed date, 1st July 2017.
If question is to me, then
I'm asking
yeah,
him,
please.
that if that is a scenario, that the cess cannot be carried forward, then naturally the trans one where good number of people have already claimed it, it has to be revised. So then this kind of decision has to be taken, the trans one needs to be revised, then what difficulty do you foresee now? I mean, if that is to be done? So because a lot of credit, a lot of things finalized there, now we are going beyond 12 months.
So I'll just spend some time to tell you how it actually works in technology. It
Okay.
would be an interesting, because
Okay.
different than
Okay.
general. Like you said that you got 41 amendments, 22 substantive, 4 unimportant, 6 only have crux.
Okay.
We as technology don't bucketize them in this fashion at all.
Okay.
We only look at the end, can it be implemented? Is the mathematics defined or not?
Okay.
So that's the first thought we have. So the moment a topic comes, we look at the end of the pipe to see कि ये काम हो भी सकता है कि नहीं. और उसमें दो parts हैं. If it is something related to GSTR1 and purchase, like matching, etc., that is fully under the control of my software. I can use my ingenuity to do matching on whatever logic I feel like.
Right.
But one constraint is there. If I need certain data from either NIC or GSTN, it is available to me through APIs. And APIs means they will tell me to give them some information and they will give me an answer. Rest everything is a black box concept.
Okay.
So now in trans 1, it has certainly got to be through retrospective thought processes.
Right.
वो नहीं किया तो फायदा किसी को नहीं होगा.
Absolutely.
और मुझे API मिलनी चाहिए उसको एडजस्ट करने के लिए.
Okay.
So if I get the API, we'll do it.
We'll do it.
If we don't get the API, it's not in my scope to do it because it does not belong to me. So my focus only goes on whether the API will come or not.
And
Coming to the legality of this proposition of doing away with the cesses with retrospective effect, there will be definitely challenges to it in view of Vodafone case and government's own commitment that we don't want them to be retrospective. It's very hard on the taxpayer that once he has taken credit, now you ask him to pay and all that. That's one part of it. Definitely there will be challenges to it. But there's only one clause which protects the government to do it. There's a clause for protecting transition provision, which said up to 3 years they can clarify anything. So if the government does it with the retrospective act, it's permitted there. So that will be something of a situation which will be slightly different from Vodafone case, having armed itself with that provision, which is a part of the act only. So that will be something interesting to see how the legal battle goes. But yes, it is very unfair on the part of the government to recover retrospectively something which was given earlier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have another point on the issue of legality, because under the provision of taking credit for under Tran 1, the cesses, that was the education cess or higher education cess or critical land cess, yeah, those were not allowed. So anyone who had taken that credit is taken inadmissible credit, number one. So legally they have to reverse this. This is one part. Second part, even if government allows that, then what would happen? We are carrying the amount of all such cess in our books. So we will have to write it off if government don't allow.
Absolutely.
It will have impact on profitability of the company.
It will.
Yes. So there emerges two situations: those who have erroneously taken the credit in Tran 1, so they will have to face litigation.
Right.
Right. And those who have not taken, simply they are going to lose their money.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so far, any indirect tax, the intention is that there won't be any cascading impact on the trade. But here, so far education says TKC etc. is concerned, finally it is going to be burden on the industry.
Yes.
So government must think about this seriously and decide favorably.
Right. Let me go to Mr. Neeraj. Did you find anything with respect to SMEs, MSME sector? That is one sector which is badly hurt. And they are still facing, because of the refund crunch, etc., still facing the erosion of the working capital.
Yes. I was reading in the newspaper that there is a good amount of industry in Tirupur.
Yes.
I think
The textile,
textile industry in
Yes.
Tamil Nadu. So I read that there are almost 30 to 40%. There were 30 to 40% small units which have shut. And the reason they have given that why they are shut is that they have to take the help of a chartered accountant, or they have to take the help of an accountant. So which they were not doing in an earlier regime. So now what is happening is that ultimately when they were exporting the goods, so they were exporting against the H form, so they don't have to pay the tax and they were exporting the goods. But now after that they have to pay the tax, and then they have to claim the refund. So they say that the businessman which had an access to a chartered accountant, which had access to a accountant, they have claimed the refund. But very small people, they have not been able to take the refunds for that. So SMEs has been really very hardly hit, because they don't have an access to the knowledge that is available with the professionals. So because they were working on a very thin margins because of the competition, now they have to take the help of a professional, or they command their own fee, and they ask for a fee for that. So they are not able to access that. So that's why a lot of industry has been, the SMEs, they have shut their businesses. So that has really impacted.
Let me go to Mr. Arora. In fact, he was chairman of one of the export promotion councils also.
Yeah.
So maybe looking at this aspect.
I'll just talk about it. See, what has happened? Now I give a typical example of Banaras, Prime Minister's constituency. A lot of promises that you are doing a lot of handloom work. We'll give you machines which will make you power loom. Fine, required, do it. Now you are an artisan sitting in Banaras making beautiful sarees. Maybe some are using power loom, some are using handloom. I have a threshold limit of 20 lakh available to me as an artisan, sufficient for me. But the moment I sell something out of UP, I'm liable to pay tax.
Yes.
So what do? Either I comply with so much of this thing as an artisan, I am not competent to do so much of a compliance. Even as a lawyer, we fear getting into the GST network.
Right.
Now what is the option? I have to have a middleman who is already registered, who's a rich man. Maybe he takes my sarees and he sells it across orders I am getting. So you are bringing in more and more middlemen.
Absolutely.
So that is becoming a problem area for them. Now you, for handicrafts, you have said, okay, some limit is allowed even if it is outside the state. Why not for artisans and others?
Right. Absolutely.
And why confined to handlooms also? Okay, artisans below 20 lakhs selling this thing even outside state, 5 lakh limit is permitted.
That makes
so
sense.
these are the kind of radical reforms you have to think and go ahead.
Yes, absolutely.
I
please.
think for the SME sector, That's composition scheme. The actual need is to sell outside the state.
True.
Right, absolutely.
That has not yet been addressed at all. I think that is the most fundamental addressation which needs to be done.
Absolutely.
And besides that, I would like to add, there are other service providers also, like you see the salon ones, the people who are running the salon, people who are running the dry cleaning shops. So ultimately, there should be a composition scheme for them as well, because charging an 18% them, they feel that in the businesses, they will be out of the business. So for them also, there should be a composition scheme, and these are small service providers, they will definitely benefit out of it.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up, the last question to Mr. Thakur, that cancellation of registration continues to be a Himalayan challenge for a good number of taxpayers. But why?
I tell you some few practical examples. Once VAT got migrated, service tax got migrated to GST, chartered accountants weren't fully under control. So all the small players who did not know the law, the composite key, etc., was with the CS. For passwords, OTPs all went to the CS. They were not too friendly terms. For cancellation, cancel ho gayi ya migrate ho gayi. So I think half the people at the lower end of the pyramid are just got into problems because they were not clear exactly what needs to be done. On the enterprise side, I don't think there is any problem at all.
Okay.
So
It's only at the lower end of the pyramid that things have got into a problem, but they have not given a method that perhaps you can reapply. The procedure is not very clear.
Okay.
So that procedure perhaps be expected now. And if the automatic cancellation has been done, perhaps good. But if it has continued and you have not been able to do, then you will have to take some.
I have a real story about my company only.
Okay.
We had another company that was merged with my parent company several years ago in 2011 by order of the High Court.
Okay.
And we have applied for the cancellation of the registration in the particular name of that company, that was the sale tax registration. In their file they did that, but actually it was not done. After introduction of GST, a registration had been automatically issued to that entity.
Provisional.
Provincial, of course, initially, right.
And we were not aware. One fine day we got a notice, you have this and this registration and you have not filed any return. So we were surprised, what could that be? Then we looked into the details and found that it is the same old entity that is now merged with my parent company and still that is live. We approached to the tax authority with an application and the order of the High Court, etc., etc. Okay, he did whatever he could. He put a note, it need be cancelled. Even till now, it is not cancelled.
Yes, they don't cancel.
So absolutely a problem they face practically.
So now they are going to propose something for change.
Yes.
Instead of immediately cancelling, they will suspend that.
Yes,
so that the requirement of the return, etc.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. So that I would say at least it is a good step.
Yes.
So that if it is suspended, you are relieved from filing returns and other compliances.
I know that's correct. No, but I think initially they did it because they were trying to look at the size of the tax base, and the center and the state they had to divide it.
Yes.
So from the state side, even the old data of sales tax, they furnished entire data.
Yes.
So even the
data was migrated into GST.
Less than 10 lakh, 10 to 20 lakh bracket.
This is how they did it.
And there may be many cases where the person who was holding that company is unaware because he has closed the business, the contact number, etc., whatever was registered with the sales tax authority in those days, on those they are sending notices and they are issuing all this registration and other documents. So the person actually is unaware of what has happened.
Right. So that must be the story of millions of taxpayers who are waiting for this, the biggest gift called cancellation. They're waiting for it. So on this note, let me thank my four guests and wrap it up. And very good suggestions have come. One is, of course, the composition dealer side, that even for the service provider, that there is a need for a composition scheme. At least the small service providers who may be having a turnover of 25 or 30 or 40 lakhs maximum, then of course the benefit must be extended to artisans for that matter, the handloom sector. You know what has been done to handicraft sector. If the government is serious about the exports, and exports, if you go by Mr. Prabhu's statement that India's export needs to go up to 25% of the GDP. If that is what is to be achieved, then little more efforts, and we need to gear up in that direction. Little more exemptions, and particularly the compliance burden needs to be taken care of. And apart from that, the amendments have been welcomed by the industry, and particularly the technological challenge. Of course, there would be lots of challenges for the GSTN, and if the e-way bill is to be linked, then of course that nexus has to be established technologically. That will be a big challenge if the preventive measure is going to be reinforced by the government. But more or less, the GST is almost settled. The industry has welcomed. Some of the e-way bill related issues will continue to be there. That needs to be taken care of, because these are new concept, and ultimately the tax laws cannot be ahead of the practices and the behavior on changes in the service delivery. So service delivery has undergone, let's call it a mobile van based service delivery. So naturally the tax laws, the procedures have to be evolved. So on this note, thank you for watching TIOL, and look forward to more positive changes and decisions from the GST Council. Thank you.
Thank you.